Luigi Mangione, you saucy devil you, is the incorrect reaction we should have to someone who's on trial for murder, right? Well, the internet may disagree with that. A 26-year-old Ivy League graduate accused of assassinating United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione's case is not just another high-profile criminal proceeding. It's a full-blown cultural phenomenon. And, as the internet does best, it has turned a literal murder trial into a bizarre mix of true crime obsession, conspiracy theories, and some truly unhinged thirst posts. Because yeah, if you're young, vaguely attractive, and accused of a major crime, Twitter, sorry Elon, X, will make you their problematic king. But why has this case in particular gone viral? Is it just yet another example of media sensationalism? Or is there something deeper at play? And more importantly, why are people on TikTok calling this guy jailbait Jesus? Today, we're diving into the internet's latest fixation, covering everything from the ethics of romanticizing accused criminals to why we, as a society, simply cannot behave online. On December 4th, 2024, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was fatally shot outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where the company was holding an investor meeting. What initially appeared to be a shocking but isolated act of violence quickly became something much larger. A case that would spark debate, speculation, and widespread public fascination. Investigators soon uncovered evidence that suggested that the attack was premeditated. Shell casings that were found at the scene were inscribed with the words deny, defend, depose, a detail many believed references alleged tactics used by insurance companies in America to reject claims. Adding to the speculation around Mangione's motives, a handwritten document recovered from his person expressed deep disdain for corporate America, with a particular focus on the healthcare industry. Days later, Mangione was apprehended at Altoona, Pennsylvania, at a McDonald's, because why skip out on your daily breakfast? After a customer recognised him and reported him to the authorities. At the time of his arrest, he was found carrying an untraceable ghost gun and a fake ID. He was charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 1 count classifying the crime as an act of terrorism. Despite pleading not guilty, the case has deeply divided public opinion. Some view him as a vigilante striking back at corporate greed, while others see him as a dangerous extremist whose actions cannot be justified. But beyond the legal case itself, what does the public reaction say about the way that we consume crime stories? And what ethical concerns about a high-profile defendant becoming the subject of online fascination? To answer these questions, we must investigate the media coverage, the social media discourse, and the broader cultural forces that have turned this case into something much bigger than a trial. Time for some conspiracy theories, folks. Even before Luigi's trial began, the case became a breeding ground for conspiracy theories that quickly flourished online. Across Reddit, TikTok, and X, or as I like to call it, the app was formerly good until it was rebranded from Twitter. I'm not letting it go, guys. I'm not letting it go. Users have been deep diving into his arrest and his public records, creating elaborate theories that are as wild as a 4 a.m. YouTube rabbit hole. Some of the most popular, and let's be real, strange, include eyebrow discrepancies. A segment of internet sleuths have pointed out that Mangione's mugshot doesn't quite match earlier images of him. This has led to speculation that the person that was arrested was not actually Mangione, but an imposter. My personal favourite, the fascination around the number 286, which is where it gets truly next level. Conspiracy theorists have zeroed in on a particular detail. Mangione had exactly 286 tweets before his arrest. What's more, his Pokemon avatar, Breloom, was the number 286 in the Pokedex. Now I'm all about Pokemon. I'm all over that shit. But Breloom, really? I mean, it's not really much talking about me as like I'm literally represented by Snorlax, you know, sleeps all the time, eats, and gets really angry when woken up from a nap. But that fucker can run. Me, on the other hand, not so much. To add fuel to the fire, the number 286 is also linked to a health insurance appeal code. Some see this as a hidden message embedded into his online activity. And there's also connections to the board game Monopoly. Mangione's arrest took place in Atlanta, Pennsylvania, which just so happens to be the home of the Pennsylvania Railroad, a property in the classic board game Monopoly. The American version, at least, as in Britain we have obviously got different properties. Now, some conspiracy theorists are running this idea that this is a hidden Easter egg, an intentional nod to financial corruption. But here's the twist. Monopoly was not originally just created to be a game, but rather a critique of capitalism. The game was created in the early 20th century by Elizabeth Magie, who intended it to expose the dangers of monopolies and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few, which she saw as an exploitive system. So in this context, you could say that Mangione's arrest in a town associated with the very game designed to critique capitalist practices kind of adds a layer of dark irony. Maybe Mangione's story is, in a way, the real-life consequences of living in a system that allows corporations to monopolise sectors like healthcare. It's almost as if the game, meant to expose corporate greed, became an unintended prophecy. Or maybe I've been watching too many late night conspiracy videos. Another prominent theory circulating online is suggesting that Luigi Mangione is being framed as a scapegoat for a deeper, more sinister systemic corruption within corporate America. Some online users are convinced that the evidence against him is fabricated or manipulated to protect the real culprits behind the alleged corporate malpractice. These ideas have gained traction. Even news outlets, some with millions of followers, began to pick up on the framing narrative. As this theory spread like wildfire, it's easy to see how the lines between fact and fiction become completely blurred. Was Mangione really the victim of a corporate cover-up? Or was he simply the one responsible for these events? The online discourse has made it almost impossible to distinguish between the two narratives, creating a world where anything could be possible. While many of these theories are tenuous at best, they highlight the internet's tendency to weave complex narratives around high-profile cases. In today's digital age, speculation spreads faster than verified information, creating an environment where fact and fiction, like I said earlier, often blur together. What we're left with is a mixture of reality and theory, and the line between the two becomes increasingly difficult to discern. While the conspiracy theories and political debates swirl around Mangione's case, another narrative has emerged that centres on a more personal motivation, his alleged experience with the healthcare system. Some believe that Mangione's actions were not driven by ideology alone, but the pain and frustration that he experienced firsthand in dealing with a broken system. This perspective suggests that the attack on the CEO Brian Thompson was, in a way, an act of rebellion against the injustices within the healthcare industry. Supporters of this theory point to Mangione's past, citing his claims of having been mistreated or denied coverage by healthcare insurance companies. In a handwritten document that was allegedly found with him after his arrest, Mangione expressed deep anger towards the corporate greed of the health insurance sector, claiming that his personal struggles with the medical care had pushed him to the brink. For some, this aligns with a growing frustration that many Americans feel about a system that prioritizes profit over human lives. Some argue that Mangione's action, whilst extreme, was a direct consequence of the healthcare system's failings, and that his violence was, in their eyes, a desperate cry for help, a violent response to years of neglect that he had endured. This interpretation of Mangione as a victim of the system suggests that his actions weren't fueled by blind hatred or political extremism, but rather by a profound sense of injustice. And when you think of it like that, it's not difficult to see why people, especially those who have faced similar struggles in healthcare, might interpret his actions this way. For them, Mangione's attack on Thompson represents more than just an isolated act of violence. It's a manifestation of anger that millions feel as they face the harsh realities of a for-profit healthcare system. Critics of this viewpoint argue that while it's valid to acknowledge the problems within the healthcare system, justifying an act of violence as a form of resistance is dangerous and unacceptable. But for many, the core issue is the systemic cruelty of a healthcare industry that often leaves the most vulnerable to suffer in silence. In this sense, Mangione's actions are seen as a reflection of that deep-seated frustration, one that has been growing for years in a country where access to care is often determined by wealth and status. In this light, Luigi Mangione's motives become a complicated mix of personal tragedy and ideological conflict, and frustration with a system that failed him. His actions, then, might be understood not just as a political statement, but as a desperate form of resistance against a machine that many believe has no regard for human life. And it wouldn't be an online phenomenon without some arguing within the left. As Luigi Mangione's case continues to make headlines, it has sparked intense debate around the intersection of politics, violence, and justice. One of the most controversial aspects of the case online is Luigi's alleged ties to right-wing ideologies. Some have pointed to his social media activity before the assassination, where he expressed disdain for big government and corporate control, sentiments often associated with the far-right thought. But here's where things get a little bit complicated. Despite his apparent leanings, a surprising number of leftists have rallied in Mangione's defence. In the face of criticism, some have argued that Mangione's actions should not be seen through the lens of political ideology, but as an act of defiance against a system they see as corrupt. For them, Mangione's assassination of Brian Thompson, regardless of political affiliation, is a direct attack on the entrenched powers of corporate America. Powers that have historically benefited from the oppression and exploitation of the working class. And as Luigi has been seen as a member of the middle class, this has been used to argue the need of class unification, as obviously, even middle class individuals can become exploited by the healthcare system. So in this context, Mangione is viewed as a symbol of resistance, a person who fought back against the very system that has continually marginalised and harmed everyday people. But this support has not come without backlash. How can you, as a progressive, justify supporting someone whose beliefs contradict everything you stand for? Has become the central question in these online debates. And that's a difficult position to navigate. How do you balance solidarity with a person's political actions when their broader ideology is in direct opposition to your own? The response from Mangione's defenders has been very clear. They agree that the larger issue at hand is the fight against systemic injustice. Whether or not Mangione's personal beliefs align with leftist ideologies, they argue that his decision to act is an important form of resistance. This view reflects the key tenet of solidarity, that in times of injustice, people can and should stand together, even when they may not fully agree on everything. The notion here is simple: the enemy of my enemy is my ally, even if our methods of resistance are different. In this polarised climate, it's easy to forget that sometimes solidarity doesn't have to mean ideological agreement. It means standing up against a system that harms people, whether or not you share the same political views. In the end, this case raises fundamental questions around the nature of activism and resistance in the modern world, and whether we should focus on the politics of the individual or the systems that they're fighting against. The media's role in amplifying public fascination within this case cannot be overlooked. Headlines emphasising Mangione's background, intellect, and physical appearance have contributed to his status as a perplexing figure. Like if every true crime fan decided to make their own serial killer starter pack. Think Ted Bundy meets Zodiac with a dash of GQ. True crime podcasts, YouTube deep dives, and even mainstream media outlets have all played a part in driving the public narrative, often presenting the case as a larger-than-life drama rather than a legal proceeding. It's like every media outlet collectively decided to turn Mangione into the next true crime Netflix docuseries, with 8 episodes, a killer soundtrack, and a bunch of people who swear they knew it was him all along. But people online are arguing that when the arrest came and Mangione was taken into custody, the media went silent. It's like the moment he was behind bars, all the hype around him suddenly just disappeared. People argue that the media's relentless coverage of him suddenly stopped, as if the algorithm decided it was done now. And naturally, this sudden shift in coverage didn't go unnoticed, though you can argue that this is just the news. You know, it does its big case and then it moves on, because how else is it going to get revenue and clicks? But it actually led to a new wave of conspiracy theories about what really happened behind the scenes. In their eyes, Mangione had been a threat to the system, and the media had simply decided to sweep him under the rug. It's almost as if the story had been shut down before it could go too far, like the digital version of a hush money agreement. When something goes quiet in a world that thrives on 24/7 content, it's easy for some to imagine the worst, even if the media just simply moved on to the next big scandal. But here's where things get icky. Mangione's case has sparked an unusual trend of widespread sexualization. Many online users have fixated on his physical attractiveness, with some even expressing romanticized or sexualized fantasies about him. And we've seen this before with figures like Ted Bundy and Jeremy Meeks. But Mangione's case is different, right? His alleged crime ties to anti-corporate sentiment, not ruthless killings of women. His fan base seems to believe that they're not just enamored with him, but fighting the power by writing him love letters in prison, as if he's a revolutionary heartthrob. Some admirers frame their attraction as support for a martyr fighting corporate greed. It's like a gothic Robin Hood narrative, minus the archery and a very unconventional form of protest. Others are just indulging in the aesthetics of the bad boy archetype, because nothing says I'm an intellectual like romanticizing a mugshot that could be from a true crime magazine. Love letters began flooding Mangione's prison mailbox, with some fans even creating fan art. Fan art? Really? Critically, this sexualization distorts the crime and its impact on the victim's family, who must witness their loved one's murder overshadowed by internet fantasies. You know, just imagine being the Thompson family. You're trying to grieve whilst all you can see are memes and t-shirts of your loved one's killer turned into the internet's latest heartthrob. While some may argue around the corruption of this healthcare CEO, it's possible to acknowledge the tragedy of death whilst also supporting acts of rebellion. Outrage can often be seen to justify violence, especially when framed through a revolutionary lens, because often revolutions rely on violence to get anywhere. But death is always tragic for someone, especially for the family of those that are deceased. This phenomenon also highlights the double standards of how male and female criminals are perceived. Women accused of crimes are often vilified as dangerous or unstable, and their cases can be clouded by sexism. But men, especially those that are conventionally good-looking, get romanticized. The same society that would tear down a female criminal for her actions is now putting Mangione on a pedestal because of his rebellious image, forgetting that we're talking about an alleged murderer, not the lead in a young adult dystopian novel where questionable decisions are justified for a greater good. And that's not the only double standard at play here. For years, society has rightfully criticised how men objectify and sexualise women, often reducing them to objects of desire. From Reddit threads about the friend zone to the endless commentary on women's appearances, the conversation about sexualisation has centred around how men treat women, often without regard for their humanity. But with Mangione, the same behaviour is happening and it's almost normalised. This normalization of sexualization is happening without the same level of criticism that women typically face when sexualized. When women criminals, or even public figures, receive too much attention, society often condemns them for using their sexuality to get ahead, often focusing more on their looks than their actions or their talents. Even though a person is never solely responsible for someone sexualizing them, as the onus should be put on the person that's, doing the sexualization. Yet Mangione is celebrated for his appearance, with fans swooning, making thirst memes, and even buying merchandise with his face on it. This represents a troubling flip, where the same behaviour that's usually criticised when directed at women is now celebrated when aimed at Mangione, simply because he's a bad boy with a mysterious allure. Instead of focusing on injustice, we're caught up in turning him into a tragic hero. It's as if the internet collectively forgot that objectification should be called out, regardless of the gender involved. However, some users are criticising the focus on his appearance, especially in light of the rumours about his supposed sex tapes. The latest controversy surrounding Mangione's case stems from unverified reports that he filmed over 20 highly stylized sex tapes before his arrest. These rumours have spread widely, with speculation around deepfakes or a targeted smear campaign. Some suggest that deepfake technology could be used to manipulate the narrative, while others argue that this is a deliberate attempt to distract from the severity of his legal situation. If the tapes do exist, they would constitute a severe violation of privacy, akin to revenge porn. Revenge porn, the practice of sharing intimate images or videos without consent, is a criminal act in many jurisdictions, but remains a persistent issue, especially when it involves public figures. In this case, Mangione could become another victim of this cruel practice, further amplifying his digital humiliation. Even if these tapes are fabricated, the rumour itself highlights the dangers of AI-generated pornography and digital manipulation. As deepfake technology advances, the line between reality and fabrication becomes increasingly blurred. Deepfakes have been used to make non-consensual pornography, with victims' faces swapped onto explicit content without their consent. The mere speculation around Mangione's tapes feeds into a digital ecosystem that thrives on manipulation, misinformation, and exploitation, making it, again, increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction. A running theme in this case. When people consume and share fabricated sexual content, even part as a conspiracy theory, they engage in an act that violates the victim's rights, treating their image as entertainment rather than respecting their autonomy. People's responses online have only exacerbated the situation. Some online forums joke about needing Mangione's sex tape for research or send me the link so I can report it, while others are voicing discomfort over the ethical implications of turning someone's image into a commodity. This spectacle raises significant ethical questions around commodifying individuals, particularly through revenge porn. Laura Bates, an expert theorist on this topic, argues that revenge porn is about stripping away a victim's autonomy, using their body for humiliation or political gain. Whether the tapes are real or speculative, the discussion around them turns Mangione's image into a battleground for social and political power. Unlike traditional narratives, the weapon in this case is a digital image that can be manipulated for any agenda, political, sexual, or representational. So the widespread obsession with Mangione is not about a man accused of a crime. It's about how the internet creates and sustains figures as both heroes and villains, prioritizing sensational narratives over facts. There's a danger in how some online spaces have turned Mangione into a sexual object and a political symbol, blurring the lines between justice, empathy, entertainment, and our own sexual gratification. This dual perception risks ignoring the human consequences of his alleged actions. especially for the victim and their family. Finally, it's critical to consider the implications of sexualizing criminal figures, especially when it comes to the way that male criminals are perceived. As I have said, women accused of crimes are often vilified for their sexual behaviour, but men, particularly those that fit a certain aesthetic, are often idolised and sexualised in ways that are deemed acceptable. This normalisation of sexualisation, even for criminal figures, reveals how deeply ingrained these gendered expectations are. Mangione's attractiveness has become part of his mysterious allure, which only enhances his appeal to fans, perpetuating a troubling double standard in the way society views male and female criminals. To conclude, Luigi Mangione's case exemplifies how modern internet culture can distort reality, blending crime, conspiracy, and celebrity into an addictive spectacle. From theories about his innocence, motivations, to bizarre sexualization, the online response reveals deep-seated societal contradictions. The same voices that will champion privacy and justice often engage in objectification and misinformation when it suits their own narratives. As the trial continues, the question remains, will the focus ever return to the legal facts, or has Mangione become yet another victim of the internet's endless hunger for controversy? In a world where crime stories go viral, where does responsible discourse end and speculation begin? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you did enjoy this video and you want to see more of this content, please click subscribe and give the video a like. And with that, I'll see you soon.